Welcome to Home Care Business Insights, your go-to resource for exploring the many aspects of running a successful home care business. Whether you're an industry pro, new entrepreneur, or just curious about the industry, this podcast offers strategies, tips, and solutions to help you succeed. While AI-generated voices host the episodes, the insights are real and designed with your growth in mind. Let's dive into what matters most in building a thriving home care business. Now let's hear from our AI hosts.
Welcome back to Home Care Business Insights, Season 1, Episode 3. We're diving into something that I think is pretty relevant to all of us. Burnout. Running a home care business, it can be really rewarding, but it takes a lot out of you.
Yeah, it really does. And we put so much of ourselves into caring for others, It's easy to forget about our own well-being.
Yeah, I think that's super important. Before we even get into all the things that we can do, it's important to even just recognize it,
Yeah.
Like, how can we fix something if we don't know it's broken?
That's a great point. And the thing about burnout is it's kind of sneaky, It sort of creeps up on you and you might just think, oh, I'm just tired or stressed. But it can actually be way more serious than that.
Right. So, what are some of the signs? What should we be looking out for?
Well, both of the articles that we're looking at today actually talk about a lot of the same things, like just feeling exhausted all the time, feeling kind of cynical about your work, not getting as much done, even like physical things like headaches and not being able to sleep.
Yeah, it's almost like this gradual drain on your energy and your passion for what you're doing. I know I've definitely had those times where I'm just completely wiped, even if I get a full night's sleep.
Yeah, and that's definitely a warning sign for sure. Another thing that I thought was really interesting was one of the articles talked about how burnout can actually lead to higher turnover with your staff.
Oh, wow.
Because, if you're burnt out, you're not going to be the best leader for your team, and that's going to affect everyone,
That's a good point, actually. I hadn't really thought about it in terms of staff retention, but it makes total sense.
Oh.
So we know some of the signs. How do we stop it from happening in the first place?
Well, I really liked this idea of clarity breaks.
Yeah.
It was from that Activated Insights article. And it's basically just scheduling regular time to kind of step back, reflect, think strategically, work on your business, not just in it,
That sounds great in theory, but honestly, who has time for that?
Yeah.
It's hard enough just to get through the day sometimes.
I know, right? But what's really cool is that even short breaks can make a big difference. They were saying even just blocking off half a day each month to really focus on those bigger picture things can help a lot.
Okay, yeah. That's actually doable. It's instead of just constantly putting out fires, you're taking the time to sharpen your tools so you can be more effective,
Yeah, exactly. And this kind of goes hand in hand with another big one, which is delegation. Both of the articles talked about how important it is to let go of some of that control and let other people help you.
Ugh, delegation. See, that's something I've always struggled with. I think a lot of us do, right? It's This is my business. I need to do everything.
Yeah, I get it. But the way that the CSS blog talked about it was interesting. They were saying, think of it as a way to develop your team. When you delegate, you're giving them a chance to grow. You're showing them that you trust them. And that makes everyone stronger in the long run, right?
Okay, yeah. That's a good way to think about it. It's not just about getting stuff off my plate. It's about helping them step up. So are there any specific tips for delegating well, especially in home care?
Definitely. I thought it was interesting how they talked about using things like scheduling software to really optimize those caregiver visits.
Right.
If you can take some of that, the stress off your plate in terms of managing all the schedules and who's going where, that can free you up to focus on, the bigger things, the leadership things.
Yeah, that's huge. That on-call stress is real.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got clarity breaks, delegation. What else can we do?
Well, time management, of course. But I think you already know about that, right? Prioritizing, time blocking, all that good stuff. What if we took it a step further, though? What if you integrated your time management tools with your client management system?
Oh, interesting.
You could really streamline everything, make it so much easier to keep track of schedules, communicate with caregivers, everything.
Yeah, working smarter, not harder.
Yeah, exactly. And while we're on the topic of working smarter, we have to talk about self-care. I mean, this is a must, especially in home care.
I think sometimes, though, we feel bad about taking time for ourselves. We should be working all the time. But really, we can't help anyone if we're running on empty.
That's so true. And self-care doesn't have to be this big, elaborate thing, Even small things can make a difference. The Activated Insights article mentioned getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, which Yeah, I know it can be tough.
Oh, I know. But I guess they're right. It's not just a luxury. It's like essential, right? Like eating and drinking water.
Exactly. And it's just as important for your mental and emotional health as it is for your physical health, right?
Hmm.
I mean, if you're not getting enough sleep, you're going to be more stressed, more irritable, less able to handle everything.
And that's like the fast track to burnout city. Okay, so we've got clarity breaks, delegation, time management, self-care. What else should we be thinking about?
This one might be the most important. Building a strong support network. Both articles really stressed how important it is to connect with other people, both personal and professionally.
Yeah, I think that's super important, especially in home care, It can be really heavy sometimes emotionally, and if you don't have people to lean on, it can feel, I don't know, just really overwhelming.
Absolutely. And it's not just about like venting and stuff either. It's also about learning from each other, sharing ideas, solving problems together.
Right, like those Facebook groups you were talking about earlier.
Yes. Home Care Breakthrough Solutions and Home Care Operators Community.
Yeah, those are good ones. And of course, like our friends and family too, right?
Of course. Sometimes you just need someone to listen, someone
Yeah.
to help you see things more clearly.
Yeah, totally.
And the important thing to remember is you're not alone in this. Every home care business owner deals with these challenges. But if we build that support system and make time for ourselves, we can handle it.
This has been really helpful. I think the big takeaway for me is that avoiding burnout isn't just about like checking things off a list. It's about like a whole mindset.
Right. Definitely.
Yeah.
It's about being aware of yourself, being resilient, being proactive.
Yeah, and taking care of yourself so you can take care of others.
Exactly.
So before we move on, I want everyone listening to just take a second and think, what's one small thing you can do this week to prioritize your own well-being? Even if it's just like 5 minutes,
Yeah.
it all adds up.
Yeah, even small things can make a difference. Maybe schedule a 15-minute break for yourself each day, or delegate one task that's been weighing you down. Or maybe reach out to another home care owner just to connect.
Totally.
So, when we were talking about that support network before the break, I was thinking it doesn't have to be just other home care owners.
Oh, yeah, for sure. There's a whole ecosystem out there, right?
Mhm.
Nurses, therapists, social workers, even like the tech people who help us run our businesses more smoothly.
Right. It's like if you can tap into all of that knowledge and experience, think of the solutions you could come up with.
It's like home care, brain trust. And speaking of brains, we got to talk about the mental and emotional side of this work. That CSS blog had some good stuff about compassion fatigue, which I think, if you've been in home care for a while, you've probably felt it.
Oh, absolutely. It's impossible to do this work and not, take on some of the burden that our clients are carrying. And if you're not careful, it can really wear you down. You start to feel emotionally exhausted, maybe a little detached, even like less empathetic.
Yeah, and I think it's important to recognize that that's not a weakness. It's not that you're not cut out for this work. It's just like a natural consequence of caring so much. So what can we do about it? How do we protect ourselves?
They had a few suggestions in the blog, but the one that stuck with me was mindfulness. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, just taking a few deep breaths before you go into a client's home. Really focusing on being present in that moment, setting an intention to be, compassionate and clear-headed.
Yeah, I like that, like creating a little bit of space between you and the situation so you don't get swept away by it. Oh, they also talked about setting boundaries, right?
Yes. And I know that can be tough, especially when we want to give our clients the best possible care. But it's important to remember that boundaries aren't about being like uncaring or cold. They're about taking care of yourself so that you can keep caring.
It makes me think about what we were saying before about communication, If you can communicate your needs and expectations clearly, it makes everything so much easier.
Exactly. And that goes for communicating within your organization too. If you're feeling overwhelmed, don't just keep it to yourself. Talk to your supervisor, HR, whoever. See what kind of support is available.
Right. Maybe you need a later caseload or some extra training or even like a little time off to regroup.
Yeah.
You deserve to be supported in doing this work. It's not easy.
Exactly. And that brings us back to self-care. Again, I know we keep saying it, but it's so important. It's not selfish, it's an investment.
Yeah, an investment in yourself, in your business, in your clients. So before we wrap up this part of the deep dive, I want to challenge everyone listening to think about one small thing they can do this week to bring more joy and meaning into their work.
Maybe it's taking a few minutes each day to connect with a colleague or just like Acknowledging how much you're doing for your clients, or even just celebrating a small win, those little things can make a big difference.
They really can.
So we've been talking a lot about burnout, and I think, it's something that a lot of people in home care can relate to. But the good thing is we're not just talking about the problem, right?
Right.
We're actually looking for solutions.
Exactly. And one thing that really struck me from, both of the articles we've been looking at is that it's not just about individual strategies. It's about the whole culture of our organizations,
Yeah.
like creating a workplace where people can actually thrive.
That's a really good point, actually. I mean, we can do all the self-care in the world, but if our work environment is just inherently stressful, it's not going to be enough.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, what does that look like, a burnout-resistant culture? Well, the Activated Insights article talked about open communication, making sure people feel like they can speak up if they're feeling overwhelmed or if they need help. That's so important. Like feeling safe enough to say, hey, I'm struggling here, without feeling like you're going to get in trouble or that you're letting people down.
Exactly. And it also means that leaders have to set the example, right? Like you can't just tell your employees to take care of themselves if you're not doing it yourself.
That's true. It has to be like a core value, not just something you say, but something you actually live.
Exactly. And this kind of ties into something else that I thought was really interesting from the CSS blog, which is like the idea of finding joy and meaning in your work. If you can connect with your purpose, with why you're doing this, it's going to be a lot harder to get burnt out.
That makes sense. It's like if you have that sense of, I don't know, like a fire inside, it helps you keep going even when things are tough.
Totally. And I think in home care, sometimes we forget that, We get so caught up in the day-to-day that we forget, like, the impact we're having.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not just, like, checking off tasks on a list, right? We're helping people live with dignity, giving their families a break. Sometimes we're the only people they see all day.
And it's important to celebrate that, like celebrate your team, acknowledge the work they're doing, be grateful for the opportunity to do this work, like remember why you got into this in the first place.
That's such a good reminder. It's so easy to lose sight of that.
Yeah.
All right. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave everyone with one final thought.
Your well-being isn't optional. Okay. It's not a luxury. It's essential. If you want to have a successful home care business, if you want to have a fulfilling career, you have to take care of yourself. And you can do that, by prioritizing self-care, building a supportive culture, and staying connected to that purpose, that fire inside.
Love it. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the heart of home care. We'll see you next time on Home Care Business Insights.